Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Ashleigh Early.
And I'm Kasey Jones.
And it's special today because we're doing something a little bit different. We are going to talk to you a little bit about the State of Sales Survey. And the State of Sales Survey is something that we launched back in February, but we're going to be doing a big push for this month and want to explain to you a little bit more about what we're doing and why it matters. So please listen to the whole thing. Make sure you understand. And I will say this a lot of times during this episode, but please go to othersideofsales.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you will see a link for the State of Sales Survey. It takes 5 to 10 minutes to complete on average. It makes a huge difference, and we'll talk about exactly why in a minute. But let's just kind of start out with a little bit of history about how this came about. So when we started the Other Side of Sales, when we started thinking about what this was going to look like, Kasey and I dove in and did a lot of research on what it meant and what it was like to be somebody who was underrepresented in sales, whether that was on discrimination or harassment, rates of gender equality, gender parity, all this stuff. We devoured everything that we could find for probably about, 3 months? We were looking at this stuff.
But let's be honest, it didn't really take that long because there is very, very, very little out there. When you start Googling about it, almost every kind of sales-driven organization has an article about why diversity in sales matters. And then they probably have another one about why their diverse sales team is awesome. And that's kind of it. There is, and it was funny, Ashleigh and I kept talking about this, like as a community, as an industry, we are data people. Like, we love the numbers, and there are so many organizations, the Bridge Group being a phenomenal example, that have done a ridiculously good job of gathering super important data about, especially from a leadership perspective, about quota and ramp time and
time and role, the breakdown of experience at various levels of the sales organization. Pretty much anything that is quantitative that a leader would care about. A Bridge Group does a great job. TOPA does a great job. Vorsight. There's dozens of organizations out there that do incredible, brilliant research. But
there is pretty much nothing when it comes to these kind of sticky, tough issues. What do underrepresented sales professionals go through? How many women leave sales?
Why do those women leave sales?
Why do they leave sales? How prevalent is discrimination, or how not prevalent is discrimination? And the thing that Ashleigh and I kept coming back to is, we have all heard the stories, we have all heard the anecdotes, we have all heard the rumors, but there is no repository, there is no comprehensive collection of data and or stories about these issues, about discrimination, about gender parity, about any of these things, whether they are prevalent or not. And what's disappointing about that is it's dividing us as an industry, as a community. You've got the people that maybe they have experienced things, or they have friends that have experienced things, and they believe wholeheartedly in this, and they are pissed off. And then you have other people that they just haven't seen stuff, and they haven't, maybe they've heard a rumor or two, but they don't really see any data behind it. They don't see any evidence behind it. And so they feel like people are making a big deal out of nothing, and it divides us as a community. And we realized that if we wanted to make a difference, if we wanted to do something that mattered, we needed to first help us as a community come from a shared place of understanding, so that we can all kind of get on the same page and then start to talk about, okay, what do we do?
Yep.
So this is our attempt to do that.
This is step one in the process. Step one in the process, just like with any sales process or anything in business, is you start by just trying to figure out kind of what is reality. So we designed the State of Sales survey to basically to have two components. It has a section that asks about discrimination and harassment, and we want to hear both sides, whether you've experienced it or not. That's really important. I really want to make sure we emphasize here, this isn't just about collecting the stories of, people that have experienced this, but it's also about hearing from people who haven't. That's really, really important so we can get good ideas of kind of what's going on here. But to make sure that we get, this good central repository, I of the two of us, I am really the data nerd, and Kasey is really the storytelling nerd. And it's been really fun to go through this process together, actually, because we've been almost kind of two opposing forces pulling each other in each direction. And it's been, I think, resulted in some really good content in the study itself that should give us some good things. Now, a couple things I want to mention really quickly. This is not a scientific study. We're not trying to conduct like a full census style analysis of the sales community and what's going on and all this stuff. This is just step one in the process. We're just trying to start building this repository.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in and say, at least not yet.
Yes.
Like, yes, our original idea was to do that, but we also recognize, like, look, that's a huge, huge undertaking. That's a really, really heavy lift. And frankly, to get our industry and our community to buy into that, we've got to build some trust and build some value first. And we hope to get there, but to just reiterate Ashleigh's point, this is the first step. And we're asking you to take this first step with us, but know that this is not the end all. Like, we've got a lot of other questions we want to ask. We've got a lot of other things that we want to dig into, but we need a starting point first. And this is our level best effort at getting us there.
Yep. So because I'm the data nerd, I went in scientific methoded this thing. So we start with an observation. We've done all this research and there's not a lot on these specific issues. That led us asking some questions. What does the sales community look like today? What did the demographic information look like? How common or uncommon is discrimination and harassment in sales teams? And I think the biggest question we're trying to at least get some direction on is, what don't we know about these topics? And once we had those questions, we started building out, okay, what do we think we're going to get out of this? And just like with, we each have theories about what we may or may not learn from this survey. Kasey and I each have theories, and we actually don't completely agree on things. We both have different things. We're curious to see how certain aspects are going to turn out. And in the interest of not skewing the data, we're not talking about that stuff particularly openly. But again, this isn't scientific. We have things we're super curious and interested in, but it's really about getting this central kind of repository is the word of the day, starting to get that built so we can figure out where we go from here.
And because we aren't in a position to have this be this super scientifically rigorous study, that's a big part of why we also wanted stories.
Yep.
So yes, we're going to be asking you questions that will give us quantitative data about the prevalence of some of these issues and the demographics of sales teams. But we also know that because it's not scientifically, rigorous, the stories are really going to help add some kind of color to things. And one of the things that kind of hit home for us about why this matters, and it's funny, we're recording this on, Thursday, April 30th, and John Barrows actually chimed in on a post that Ashleigh made yesterday after a conversation with Lori Richardson about the lack of women leaders in sales. And he mentioned that before Trish Bertuzzi, Lori, and I did this webinar, We Need to Talk, about kind of bro culture in sales, he put out a survey. And it was something also not scientifically rigorous. It was really an opportunity to collect stories of women's experience, and not just women. A lot of men took it too, which we really appreciated. But
And you use the survey in this webinar, which if you haven't listened to, you can go find it online. You should listen to it. You guys used the stories to dictate, to make sure that the webinar was relevant to the audience, which was really good.
And not only that, and we'll include this in the short show notes, John and I, it was really me who kind of went through it. We made sure to remove or anonymize absolutely every single story so that we could publish all the results to that survey. So you can actually go through and read these stories. And John was honest, and he was like, you know, I always thought I was this really empathetic guy, and I thought that I knew what was going on, and I was already really annoyed with bro culture. And then he read these responses, and he was absolutely blown away by the stories that women were sharing about the things that they'd experienced, and the stories that men were sharing about the things that they'd seen. And yes, there were definitely some people that were like, I don't see this, I don't think it's a big deal. But the vast majority shared stories that were so upsetting.
Yeah, everything from mild to really distressing. I mean, I was reading through these actually before we jumped on here today, and there were some that made my blood boil, and some that were, you know, I hate to say common, but that felt much more common. And that's, we want to take this idea and expand it. And take it to the next level.
And I think one of the big things is that those results really uncovered that now things are not overt. You know, like, you're not going to have your, it's pretty rare for, like, I don't know, a male sales manager to like slap you on the ass and call you sweet cheeks. And, you know, like, that doesn't happen. It's stuff that is much more subtle than that, but is still real. And so we want to be able to add some data around that, and add some, just have it be a more comprehensive kind of selection of these stories and of these experiences, so that we can really understand as an industry kind of where we are and where there's room for improvement.
Absolutely. And so that kind of brings us to, you know, the survey itself. I mentioned there's two parts. There's the demographic information, and there's the soliciting information about whether or not you've witnessed or experienced discrimination or harassment. One thing I want to really stress here, this is an anonymous survey, and we will take painstaking care, even when we're going through the analyses and doing the whatever we can, grabbing whatever results we can get out of this. Everything that we may choose to share is going to be anonymous to the point where it cannot come back to anybody. There's an option to put your email at the end of it if you want to get notified when the results are ready, but that is absolutely going to be separate from the analysis. So this is really, 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 I'm neurotic about this, and I have been from the start. There's no way that anything you put in here could come back to you.
We're not tying your email address to your stories, and we will, just like we did with, you know, the We Need to Talk thing, we will go through with painstaking care and make sure that, and frankly, I think we might wind up, if you do include some bit of detail that maybe in some off chance someone could connect to you, we will make sure that we, you know, like they do on what is it, TV shows, names and details will be changed to protect the innocent. We will make sure that it does not come back to bite you in the ass, but that we can share these stories so that people recognize, you know, what is going on, the good, the bad, the ugly.
And that brings up another point too. Again, I want to stress, if you have not experienced anything, if you have not witnessed anything, we still, like, I would say we even need you to take this.
Yes.
We really, 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 we want to hear from everybody, period. But please don't feel alienated. Like, oh, I haven't experienced anything, so I don't have anything to share. No, we want to hear your story. Just like Kasey said at the top, we've all heard the stories. We've all heard the anecdotes. We've all heard of a friend of a friend. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what you've experienced, what you've seen, what you've heard. That's what this is all about. So one thing, so like I said, it takes 5-10 minutes to complete. It is on our website. You can go there, just othersideofsales.com, click on the Other Side of Sales survey. If you're answering no to everything, it'll probably take you less than 5 minutes. Depending on how much time and effort you take to put in the stories, it can take a little bit longer, but it's really as much as you're willing to share, we'll take it. Once we close the test, and right now we're anticipating closing it sometime in early June, the survey, the data is going to be, again, Kasey and I are going to go through it. We're going to make sure we anonymize everything, and we're going to be starting the analysis process, both the two of us working together, as well as we're going to be bringing in a third-party data analyst to help us make sure that whatever trends or whatever else we can get out of this, we're getting. But again, not scientific, just trying to figure out where to start the conversation, where to dive into next. And once we've got that, now's the time to bring up the fact that we have some amazing sponsors who went out on this limb with us, and VanillaSoft, Sales Loft, and Bravado. They are helping us fund this. They're going to be helping support the results. So they're going to get access to a little bit of the data as well. And then we're going to be sharing it publicly, kind of anything that we've heard and, the general takeaways that we've got.
And keep in mind, we need your help, not just to take it, but also share this with your colleagues, with your friends. If you're a sales leader, share it with your team and encourage them to take it. I know that might be terrifying, but it's not going to come back to you, and it would really help us all as an industry. And I think it would really help us all figure out how we move forward.
Yeah. This really is about figuring out how to bring the community together. We're going to start by figuring out, okay, what do we think reality is?
Yeah.
And then starting from, once we've got some sort of general consensus on that, figuring out how to make sure that we as a community are moving in the direction that we know we need to move in. I'm very fortunate. I've felt an incredible amount of support and advocacy, and no, things have not always been perfect, but on the whole, I've had a very positive experience in sales. I firmly believe this is one of the best careers someone can pick for themselves. And I want to leave this profession better than it was when I came in. Not that it was in a particularly terrible state to begin with, thanks to people who paved the way before, but this is about making sure we've got data and stories. We've got this common experience that we can move the whole industry forward.
And there's one other thing that I just want to mention, which just came to mind while we were talking. I also want all of you to encourage the people that you know that have left sales to take the survey as well. Because I happen to know, so of the last sales team that I was on, literally every single woman no longer works in sales. And I'm going to be sending it to each of them because I also want to know why. And I think that that's something that I hope we can capture at least a little bit, is the people that maybe they're not still in the industry, but they used to be. And I do really want to know what they saw when they were in, and if the things that they saw or experienced were part of why they're no longer in these roles.
Yeah. And that brings up one more thing for me, is just so you guys get an idea. We need, ideally, a couple thousand people to take this. So just to reiterate what Kasey said, this is about sending it to people who've left sales, but who were in sales for a while, especially people who are really good. This is about making sure all of your colleagues take it. This is a call to share it with your social media people a couple times, try and get this started, try and get this really to take off. Every single answer matters, but we need to get a lot of us to take this to really make the impact that we know that this can have. So thank you for listening to us chat for a bit and explaining kind of why we're doing this, why it matters, and what we're hoping to get out of it and what we're hoping to do for you with this stuff. If you have questions, comments, concerns, anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. We would love to hear from you guys. Please take the survey. Please share it on LinkedIn. Please share it with your colleagues. We will be, sharing results and updates about how the collection is going throughout this month. But it really all starts with you opening up your browser, maybe right now, going to othersideofsales.com, top right-hand corner, you'll see the State of Sales survey, and standing up and being counted and telling us your story.
We thank you in advance. We know it's not always easy to revisit if something negative did happen. And we know it's not always that motivating if you feel like nothing happened.
Yep.
So no matter what boat you're in, we really, really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your stories with us.
All right. And with that, thank you for listening to this episode. We'll be back next week with some super exciting interviews and more discussions about things that matter. As always, don't hesitate to reach out on LinkedIn and Twitter to give us ideas for episode topics or awesome sales professionals we should be talking to. And with that, we'll talk to you next week.